Swadika, thank you for joining us on Newsline. We're broadcasting live on NBT, Radio Thailand FM 88, and on NBT World. It's Tuesday, October 28th, and you're with me, Sandrahan Utsaha. Welcome to today's segment of Thailand Moves Forward. Thailand's Prime Minister met with the Executive Director of UNAIDS to affirm Thailand's full commitment to making antiviral vaccines available to all patients, as well as monitoring foreign laborers in Thailand. Prime Minister General Prayut Chan-o-cha welcomed Mr. Michel Sidibe, Executive Director of UNAIDS and Under-Secretary General of the United Nations, where the Prime Minister officially thanked the UNAIDS organization for consistently assisting Thailand in the public and private sectors throughout the past 30 years in combating AIDS. The Prime Minister spoke of Thailand's policy in combating HIV and AIDS, which coincides with the UNAIDS 2011 to 2015 strategic plan of reducing the rate of infections to zero. The plan included the goals of having no new cases of HIV infections, having no bias towards treating certain patients, and stopping AIDS-related deaths. Thailand has received international praise for significantly decreasing the rate of HIV infections. Prime Minister Prayut said Thailand is committed to making antiviral vaccines accessible to all citizens and will work to bring foreign laborers into Thailand's healthcare system. The UNAIDS Executive Director commended the Prime Minister's in-depth knowledge of HIV and AIDS, as well as Thailand's withstanding commitment to eradicate AIDS in Thailand by the year 2030, and affirmed that UNAIDS will continue to support Thailand in its fight against the virus. Prime Minister General Prayut Chan-o-cha has insisted that the so-called Thailand Reform Institute is an independent body which has nothing to do with the government. He also urges everyone to voice their opinions through a platform to be set up to restore unity. According to the Prime Minister, the only national reform body tied to the government is the National Reform Council, or NRC. A similar one, called Thailand Reform Institute, set up to work in parallel to the NRC, is led by Mr. Sangsit Piriyarangsan. General Prayut added that a meeting would be held to discuss whether to establish a public panel to allow people to share their opinions, given there might be conflicts among them. At present, they are encouraged to voice their opinions and conflicts at Damrong Tham Center, the Government House, and the Internal Security Operations Command. There are still conflicts at present, the differences of which have yet to be thrashed out. As such, the Prime Minister has asked all parties concerned to cooperate to find a way out for the sake of the country. As for national reform, if it takes longer than a year to achieve and cannot be completed under his administration, it will be carried out by the next government. Prime Minister's Office Minister Mamluang Panatadisakul has revealed that the Prime Minister has ordered every ministry to dispatch more knowledgeable officials to work directly at the Government House's Complaint Center after finding the center has been of great help to the people. Mamluang Panata claimed that more than 80% of the people's complaints filed to the center were solved over the last 4 months. He also stated that Prime Minister General Prayut Chan-o-cha has ordered all the 20 ministries to deploy qualified officials to work directly at the service center starting yesterday. The move is expected to facilitate easier communication between government officials and members of the public, as well as to increase the number of personnel to tackle people's problems. Reports indicated that most of the complaints involved problems at the local level outside Bangkok. Officials at the complaint center have also been ordered to work closely with those at the Damrong Tham Center, which handles corruption complaints, in order to increase the efficiency in finding solutions. Mr. Surochai Lingbunlachai, Vice President of the National Legislative Assembly, or NLA, has revealed that the NLA whip will finalize the list of NLA candidates to participate in the Constitution Drafting Committee today before proposing it to the next NLA meeting for approval. The NLA had previously concluded that the number of candidates from the NLA to participate in the Constitution Drafting Committee was to be reduced to 5, and that all 5 were to be members of the NLA. Mr. Surochai opined that suitable candidates for the job should have knowledge of public law and respect of the Constitution, be knowledgeable about all the 11 reform aspects, and have political experience without being part of any political party. A decision has been made by the National Reform Council, or NRC, to select 20 candidates for the Charter Drafting Committee from its own members only, without any outsiders. On a majority vote of 175 to 39 with 5 abstentions, the NRC resolved that its 20-man quota for the Constitutional Drafting Committee would entirely consist of NRC members. The decision was in contrast to the previous recommendation of the NRC whip that 5 of the nominees should be invited from outside. During the debate prior to the vote, NRC member Bawansak Uwano, in his capacity as NRC whip, pointed out that the suggested makeup of 15 NRC members and 5 outsiders was aimed at engaging all political factions behind the years-long conflict in the reform process. He said by giving those from outside the chance to participate in drafting the new Constitution, the NRC would be able to avoid being misperceived as setting its own rules. Mr. Olongkorn Polabut, Secretary to the NRC whip, also stressed the necessity of including representatives of the conflicting parties in the drafting panel. He said the move would prevent the new charter from being labeled the fruit of the military takeover and all the reform efforts from going to waste. Nonetheless, at the end of the session, the NRC members voted otherwise. Supreme Commander General Warapong Sanghanet has greeted the defense attaché of Singapore, who finished his term in Thailand, while both sides agreed to strengthen their military cooperation. Singaporean defense attaché to Thailand, Colonel Ho Kok Lok, paid a courtesy call on General Warapong at the Royal Thai Armed Forces headquarters in order to bid farewell on the occasion of the end of his 3-year term. The outgoing attaché also introduced General Ong Yo Chun, who would succeed him in the position, and thanked the Thai military for its hospitality and support given throughout his stay in the kingdom. The two sides then discussed the Thai-Singaporean relations as well as military cooperation. General Warapong was assured that Singapore would be happy to forge even closer ties with Thailand in hopes of creating a strong foundation for the ASEAN community. In addition, Colonel Ho confirmed that the Singapore Armed Forces would participate in the next Cobra Gold joint military exercise as usual. The event is scheduled to take place in Thailand in February 2015. The government will establish 4 joint working committees with the private sector to lay down strategies to propel the economy forward. Minister of Commerce Chathai Sarikanya met with representatives from the Thai Chamber of Commerce and the Board of Trade of Thailand on Monday, and said afterwards that the 4 joint working committees would comprise 1 for international trade strategy, 1 for internal trade strategy, 1 for border trade strategy, and 1 for domestic goods distribution. The working committees will lay down the targets for 2015 for trade. Meanwhile, Isara Wongkusongkit, Chairman of the Board of Trade of Thailand said the Working Committee on International Trade will emphasize on finding new markets for Thai exports, and such markets include ASEAN countries, China, and India. A main aim is to allow Thailand to export the right items to the appropriate target countries. Meanwhile, the Committee for Domestic Goods Distribution, which consists of representatives from wholesalers and retailers, such as CP All, Central Group, and Tesco Lotus, will sell select quality products at lower than market prices. Mr. Sarat said this initiative will differ from the Blue Flag program because the goods will be distributed to all localities, whereas the goods in the Blue Flag scheme only reach certain localities. The Ministry of Culture is organizing various activities to campaign for 12 values for a happy Thai society. The activities mainly target students from elementary to higher education levels. Minister of Culture Weera Rod Pochanarat said he had assigned all units under the ministry to urgently implement the government's project to promote the 12 values. As for the Department of Cultural Promotion, it had launched 3 activities, including a traditional Thai and folk song contest, an essay contest under the topic One Value for Sustainable Society, and a playwriting contest on ethics and integrity. The minister encouraged students in all levels, as well as the general public, to enter the contests. The musical one will also be held in honor of His Majesty the King, who is lauded as the supreme artist of Thailand. Thailand's new long-term power development plan seeks to reduce electricity generation from natural gas and increase power from coal. More electricity will be purchased from neighboring countries. Minister of Energy Narongchai Akraserani said the ministry was expediting its drafting of the long-term power development plan for the year 2015 by the end of this year. The plan would raise electricity generation from coal to 30% of the total power generation and buy 1,400 megawatts of power more from Hong Sa and Laos. The ministry was negotiating to purchase more coal power from Myanmar and Cambodia. The plan will require that the government decrease electricity generated from natural gas from 70% to 30% and increase electricity generated from alternative energies such as wind and sunlight to 5%. The minister also stressed that adjustment of oil, LPG, and NGV prices must be in line with the fuel's real cost of production and the market mechanism. And the ministry is urgently studying the fuel price adjustment and compensation for affected people. The Department of Land Transport, or DLT, is preparing to raise the fare rate for taxis this December, calling on business owners and taxi drivers to talk about the new regulations. The Department of Land Transport, or DLT, Director General Thirapong Rodprasert said that the department invited business owners and taxi drivers to inform them about government guidelines for taxi vehicles and service improvements before adjusting to the new fare. The DLT will increase the fare in 2 phases. First, the fare rate will be raised by 13% this December. The new rate will increase the fare by 7 to 8% when the taxi is moving and raise the fare for stationary vehicles, meaning parked or in a traffic jam, from 1.5 baht to 2 baht. The starting fare will remain the same at 35 baht. In the meantime, every taxi vehicle must pass an inspection by the DLT. The department will then issue a certificate of vehicle condition to be used when bringing the car for an adjustment of the pricing meter. Taxis with an adjusted meter will display an advisory sticker from the DLT. For the second phase, the DLT will evaluate the service of taxis. Drivers are required to have a taxi driving license, be dressed properly, never refuse to accept any passenger, and always use the meter. The DLT Director General said that the adjustments are due to the higher cost of operation that is acceptable for the passengers, taxi business owners, and private taxi drivers. The new price takes into consideration many factors, such as the driver's wage, the cost or rent of the vehicle, fuel price, maintenance price, and other related costs. The new price will drive the market mechanism and improve the service. There are currently about 100,000 taxis registered with the DLT. Tourism in Phuket has not been affected by the 5.3 magnitude earthquake originating from the north of Sumatra Island earlier yesterday morning. The quake's epicenter was 24 kilometers deep under the sea and 256 kilometers away from the tourist province of Phuket. People in the area have reportedly felt the tremor, but they have continued on with their daily lives. Residents living in Talang and Rasada districts, and especially those who were close to the beach, have experienced the aftershocks. However, they did not panic as there were no warnings of an impending tsunami. Fishermen have been out and about and no damage has been reported. Tourists in Patong continue to take their time and were unafraid of the disaster. Nonetheless, they have been told to listen to updates as there could be aftershocks. The UNESCO World Day for Audiovisual Heritage is celebrated in Thailand for the 9th consecutive year with a day-long program at the Government Public Relations Department, or PRD, in Bangkok. The event is held annually to give recognition and support to professionals in the audiovisual archive sector in Thailand for their valuable efforts in preserving audiovisual materials as the primary records of the 20th to 21st centuries, as well as raising awareness for urgent action by both public and private sectors in order to keep audiovisual archives in a safe place. This year, the event is held under the theme Archives at Risk, Much More to Do, highlighting the risk that threatens the preservation of archives, which is a result of the digital age. This year's event is participated by representatives from leading organizations in the sector, such as the Museum and Archive of the Government Public Relations Department, or PRD, the Thai Film Archive, and the National Archive. It is held under the auspices of UNESCO, following the adoption of a resolution by its General Assembly to commemorate the World Day for Audiovisual Heritage in 2005. Thailand is the first country that has responded to this policy. The event began with the UNESCO Director General's message, read by the Director of Museum and Archive of the Government Public Relations Department, Ms. Kanika Chiwapakdi, followed by a demonstration of the gramophone cinema optical device, the first sound recording of the first official version of Thailand's national anthem, recorded by the Publicity Office, presently the PRD. There were also a panel discussion by archivists and representatives from the broadcast media, and an exhibition of many more media-related materials, a screening of short clips featuring the early days of the Thai broadcast media, and important historical events. The celebration is regarded as one of the initiatives of UNESCO for people to recognize the importance of audiovisual documents as a common heritage that allows us to observe the change of the nation in cultural and historical contexts that should be preserved for future generations. And that's the end of Thailand's edition of Thailand Moves Forward. Before our quick break, here's a look at the exchange rates and commodity prices.
Maintain a strong nation, Thailand is promoting 12 core values for the good of the people. Third core value, being grateful to parents and teachers.
Even if we don't see them, they are amongst us. And they're hungry. Slay your power-sucking monsters. Take their power away. Think when you plug.
Welcome back to Newsline. It's time for ASEAN and Beyond. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, ministerial meeting concluded yesterday in Sydney without reaching any agreements due to the divergences in agricultural market access and intellectual property between the United States and Japan. After the meeting, Australian Trade and Investment Minister Andrew Robb emphasized the significant progress made relating to market access and trade and investment rules, but did not mention the conclusion of the talks as the media had expected. Japanese Economy Minister Akira Amari mentioned during the previous press conference that the current obstacle lies in the major divergences between the United States and Japan over the issues relating to agricultural market access and auto exports. The United States is insisting that Japan lowers its barriers for agricultural imports, but Japan wants to protect its pork, beef, and dairy industries against the impact of foreign products. The 12 TPP negotiating countries are Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, the United States, and Vietnam. And in our international stories, a rare snow leopard made its public debut in Mexico City yesterday as part of a conservation program pioneered by the country's acclaimed Chapultepec Zoo. With the Snow Leopard Trust reporting as little as 4,000 of these species in the wild, the donation of the 2-year-old leopard to Mexico City Zoo is aimed to further a conservation program for the majestic big cat. Chapultepec Zoo hasn't seen a snow leopard in some 90 years, but the zoo officials are confident that they are well equipped to look after the endangered species. The endangered snow leopard is typically found in the rugged mountains of Central Asia and is perfectly adapted to the cold, barren landscapes of their high-altitude homes. And that's it for today's edition of Newsline. If you have any comments or suggestions, please feel free to email them to us at newsline.nbt@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook by simply typing in NNT. And you can check out our website at thainews.prd.go.th/newsing. We're saying goodbye today with some footage of stingrays in Similan Island of Phang Nga Province. Have a wonderful day. I'm Sian Rahan Utsaha. Sawadee ka.